All right, guys, welcome to episode 3 of Spread Crushers. I'm here with Chelsea Qualls, and Chelsea's a old friend of mine. I played with her twin brother, Sean Verdelli, and I'm going to bring Chelsea on today to talk a little bit about the softball world for us and what's going on right now in this situation across the country, as well as what we're dealing with here. So, Chelsea, if you'd go ahead and introduce yourself, it'd be great.
As Ben said, my name is Chelsea. I am currently a high school coach at Sprague here in Salem, Oregon. I actually came from Willamette University, coaching there for 2 years before I stepped down to come to Sprague. And before that, I was actually coaching at West Salem High School, where I graduated and coached under my high school coach to get my coaching career started. Once I had graduated from high school, I played at Chemeketa Community College for 2 years. And then I moved on to George Fox University for a year before I actually tore my rotator cuff. So that's where my softball career ended. Took a couple years off of softball and decided to come back and get back into things to coach, and because I couldn't stay away, and coaching is something that I've do.
Yeah.
So it's been uphill ever since then, and a great experience going through high school and college.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's great to hear. We obviously got someone who's been well traversed through the college ranks, someone who's battled their way through injuries. I'd like to kind of start this interview off. We talked about some brief points that we want to hit on today. The first one being, as the varsity coach right now at high school where you're at, how are you guys handling this whole COVID-19 situation? And, specifically with your upperclassmen that you've got there?
Well, obviously before, when this whole thing started, we thought that we would be back in, a couple weeks, starting March. I think it was March 13th is when this whole thing started. We thought we would have a softball season, and we were hoping and praying that it wouldn't end, especially for my seniors. I have 4 seniors, and when we finally got word that it would no longer have a season, basically was heartbreaking, saddening, and frustrating. We had a good, solid team that we were looking forward to. The bond that these girls had with just a few weeks of practice after teams were made was incredible. They all got along. There was no issues whatsoever, and to see that bond break because of this this issue going on is just heartbreaking. My seniors are not going on to play college, which is not an issue. They are focusing on grades, which is awesome. They want to have a long-term career, but they're struggling. They're struggling with not playing softball their senior year. Yeah. Going through that whole process of graduation and their senior game, and having their parents come out and see their last game they're ever going to play in for the rest of their life. So something that us past players have experienced, they don't get to experience that, and it's something that they never will. And it's I wish I could do something for them. We all do, for all of us that have experienced that and who have seniors who are coaching. It's whether it's college or high school, it's something that they'll never get.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's been tough for everyone, parents included, players, obviously. I know for, the coaching side of it, being a 16U coach myself, working predominantly with sophomores and juniors, it's been hard to see them lose their seasons out here. And now we're looking at the possibility of a delayed summer ball, if best scenario, and so I know a lot of us have our fingers crossed on that regard, and I'm sure you do too, just for your players in general in that area, all the players across the country, just to get something in and salvage anything. I can't imagine what that's like for your seniors. I know it's got to be extremely tough to deal with. There's really very little that you can do in terms of explaining things to them or giving them any sort of hope. As you already alluded to, it's this is what it is, and we've kind of have to turn the page. And it's I can't imagine being in that scenario myself. And for you as a high school coach, having to explain that to him is got to be very, very difficult. So obviously everybody around the country feels extremely heartbroken for these kids. I wish there was a better send off for them like we all had. I think we're dealing with something that none of us in our lifetimes have ever seen before, and this is a very difficult pill to swallow. But as we move forward in the interview, I wanted to kind of ask you from your perspective as a high school coach, what's your advice right now to some of these younger players, specifically in the softball community? The girls in elementary school coming up through middle school, and even some of your underclassmen in high school. What's your advice now to kind of stay ready, to stay prepared? What should these girls be doing in order to kind of make sure that their skills aren't falling off, to make sure that they're always mentally prepared for the next step, the next season, and the next challenge that they face?
The first thing is they need to want to do it. They need to want to stay in shape, softball shape,
Hmm.
as far as getting your swings in, getting ground balls, fly balls if you can in an area if you can. Um, you know, yes, you can treat this like a summer vacation, if you will, that some are. Um, and with the online distant learning starting as of today, I believe it did. The girls are still needing to go through school and still keeping up their grades and
Yes.
focusing on that, but at the same time, try and possibly think of it as you're still going through softball season,
Hmm.
especially those girls that are in high school. How would you manage your time if you were still playing softball and going to school and doing homework and everything on top of that? Um, if moving forward and moving up, as far as, if you're, you know, an 8-year-old, and if you want to move up to be competitive, how are you setting yourself up for that success? Are
Yeah.
you getting putts in? Are you, hitting off the tee every night? Are you getting ground balls? Are you throwing the ball to yourself, off the wall and just, practicing your backhands or your forehands?
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that the girls can do by themselves that they don't need someone to hit ground balls. They don't need
Hmm.
a catcher to pitch to. They
Yeah.
have targets, they have nets, so it's something that they would need to want to do, not forced to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it starts, is having that drive, that passion for playing softball. And if those girls put in that work and that effort all on their own, just imagine what's going to happen when they come back to their team and they've improved. They can see that they don't need
Mhm.
to have a partner to need to work hard
Yeah.
to better to get to that next step. Obviously it's a team uh level, and being a part of a team is all part of it, but what are you doing on the outside? Are
Yeah.
you making it better? Are you sitting and enjoying this time off? Yes, like, it's perfectly fine to take that time off. Take
Hmm.
a couple weeks off, totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
we're not allowed to do anything as a high school. So take the time to focus, get back into the routine of things now that school started again.
Mhm.
Um, but then keep working hard. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong off a tee every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take this one step further in our talking point here. And I know this is something we didn't really discuss, but now that we're on it, I'd like to just kind of throw this out to you. What's your advice to the parents now working with some of these younger girls, specifically the age brackets that you kind of talked about there, these 7, 8, 9, probably up through 11, 12-year-old girls? Is this a time that parents should be using as well? Because I know a lot of us are all in the same boat. If we're not a non-essential worker, we're at home right now. We've been furloughed. Unfortunately, some of us have been laid off entirely. But is there any silver lining to this, where we can get out and do more with our kids to help them? And what are some of those simple things that you would suggest to help, kind of keep these kids involved in the game and keep them passionate about what they need to be passionate about?
Yeah, with that, you know, with the younger girls, especially those who are little league or travel ball, get a hold of your high school coach or your travel ball coach. I'm sorry, get a hold of your travel ball coach. Say, hey, like, we understand this is going on. You're busy. If you can send some drills, something that we could do with our kid,
Yeah.
that keeps the parent and the daughter involved, um, softball wise, and for those who are busy during softball practice, they're not there, they
Mhm.
can actually see what their child is developing
Mhm.
from now. So hopefully, and like praying that we get a summer ball
Yeah.
schedule, um whether it's half a season or not, it's something. But set up a tee for them, like video them for their swing, send it to their coach, let them critique them if they can.
Mhm.
um hit them ground balls, hit them fly balls. You don't even need a bat, throw it to them.
Yeah.
um Always something a parent can do um with doing that. I mean, throwing a ball against the wall and letting her field it,
Yeah.
so always something that they can be involved in. It doesn't just have to be just the daughter
Yeah.
initiating, you know.
Yeah. Sounds like to me what you've touched on is the same thing that I've heard from a couple other people that are going to be on this show, as well as ones that I've already talked to, and that's keeping it simple at this time, but keeping it fun, and being interactive with your kid, regardless of their age, whether they're 6 or whether they're 16 or they're 18 or they're coming back from college because they've had their college seasons cut short. Spending the time with them to help them develop their skills is what keeps it fun. And so that's a really good point that you brought up there. It didn't sound like anything you said had to be some crazy drill or some, team activity. Obviously, in this sense, we can't have that. But, you're just relaying the basic information of, hey, anything is better than nothing right now. And that quality time spent is going to form that bond between that parent and that child. And it's going to make them excited to want to go out and do that. So it's really good to hear. Let me ask you this, Chelsea. Being an ex-college player, an ex-college coach, and now a high school coach, can you take us through some of the things that you look for in your players? Specifically, I've got written down here. What are you looking for from an athlete in terms of their their persona, their character, their traits? What are things that you want to see coming up through your program as you're looking down on those middle school girls that you know are going to eventually end up in your high school program?
um Coming from college and coaching high school is two different worlds, basically.
Mhm.
So having tryouts for those girls in high school is, I can't, or I don't look for a specific thing,
Mhm.
basically, because I have some girls that could be completely quiet into themselves, or I have girls who are very outgoing and gets along
Mhm.
with everyone. So when I see those girls, whether or not they're quiet or not, I I look to see how they interact with us coaches. I look to see how they take criticism, constructive criticism. I
Absolutely.
look to see how they are with grades or in school, and
Mhm.
um, everything goes into that. So I don't have like a specific, something to where I'm hoping that someone will stand out. In high school, you can't look for that one person. You have a range of talent,
Yes.
completely,
Yeah.
you know, with from JV to varsity. So there's going to be a range, and I can't be specific about one certain thing, because
Sure.
there's always going to be something that'll help the team out,
Mhm.
and having all of that will help the team come together and help build the program of what I'm trying to do. So if I'm looking for that one specific thing in a player, then I'm not building a program,
Yeah,
you know.
that's a great way of putting it. I'm really glad to hear your perspective on that. And that's why, you know, kind of starting this show, like I told you before we started recording, is these are interview based, these are interviews, but they're based not so much on drills. It's more about hearing a perspective from those people who have lived it, done it, and can now relay it to not only the kids watching, but also the parents watching and the coaches watching. And that's something that I feel is kind of missing a lot of times as coaches. We go after certain qualities and attributes in a player instead of seeing them for the overall value of who they are and what they bring to your program and how that can help. And like you said, there was something in there that you said every player has something, that they can offer to that. And if you're looking for that rather than what is the specific skill set or attribute, then you're actually building the program. And I like hearing that from coaches, and I'll say younger coaches like ourselves, even though we are starting to get older. But yeah, I like hearing that from the younger coaches. It's nice and it's refreshing, and I'm sure those parents like hearing that too. Um, there was something you touched on there real quickly, and you said you had mentioned grades. And so I want to go ahead and bring that up here. And this has nothing to do with softball as much as it is an athlete in general. And so someone who's a high school coach right now in Oregon, just like any other coach across the country, explain to me, in your opinion, why grades are so important and why you guys are constantly checking and helping your athletes, reach their potential in the classroom.
So I'm going to start with saying that grades are very important to me, because I specifically have a practice plan that does not start until an hour after school ends. The reason being is it gives those girls an hour to get their homework done, talk to teachers, make up tests,
Mhm.
whatever they need to do, so that they're not missing practice time, so that they can still focus on school and their grades and then still focus on being a part of the team. Um, I work at Sprague as well, so I'm able to check on the girls every single day, which
Mhm.
I do. Um, my rule is if you have D's or F's, you don't practice until you get those D's or F's up.
Mhm.
Um, if you have F's, you don't practice. That means you don't play. Um, and I, for example, um, I sat a girl for the first 2 weeks because she had an F.
Mhm.
Uh, it's something that I believe that they can do better in life when they have good grades, because when they have good grades, that means they're putting in the effort. They're making the right choices. They're not just thinking that they're just going to skate by, in high school, even though they're not trying to play college ball.
Yeah.
The whole point of having good grades is so that they can have going into college with those good grades and setting themselves up for um, a career that they want to be successful in.
Yeah.
And it all starts with high school. And um, I have a couple girls that, I push every day. I make sure that they have their grades up. I talk to their teachers every day, what classes they're missing, what homework they're missing, because it's important to me. Grades are very important, and my parents are very much on board with it.
Yeah.
I have never had any issue with sitting a girl for their grades. I've had support from my athletic director, from my principal. So grades are something that I think that if they don't get that study time in and that routine in with high school, they're not going to have it in college. And I think that's because that's where it starts, is trying to get that routine for them and trying to be successful in high school to move to college.
Yeah.
Um, so not everyone thinks or does everything the same way, but I always said coming from college that my team will practice late because they need to focus on their grades,
Yeah.
and
That's
I had any issues with it.
That's awesome. It's really refreshing to hear that too, especially from someone like yourself who's in it right now in the thick of it, dealing with high school kids, seeing the middle schoolers come up through that program. It's cool to hear you give them that hour that might be in some cases the only hour that these kids get to do their homework, because maybe some of the upperclassmen have to go to jobs after practice. Maybe some of them don't have the family environment at home to be able to get things done, in a friendly manner. Maybe they don't have the help that they need. So giving them that extra hour after school and being there on campus with them is really nice. And it's good to hear that you're invested in your players more so than just the athletic side of things. I think we miss a lot of that right now as coaches. I know I take great pride in my players' grades, even though I'm just a travel ball coach. I have every 6 to 8 weeks, my players, if they're watching this later on, they'll probably smirk and laugh and say, yeah, Coach Shivers does it. But even as a travel ball coach, I make them send me in a private message a screenshot of their progress reports to make sure. I mean, this too, and I know we want to try to keep the conversation from going too much into the collegiate route, but the only small sample I will say, and I know you'll agree with this, is if you even want to have a shot remotely at college, you've got to set the tone of the work ethic and that effort that you put in scholastically and academically, because like you said, there is life after sports, and that's going to be a big deal on what you do in college to give yourself that chance at a career. And so for me, it's paramount on what my players are doing, regardless of whether or not I'm a travel ball coach or a high school coach or a collegiate coach. We should be invested in their future and making sure that they're doing the right things while we're not watching them all the time, to make sure that they are being rewarded with the privilege to play sports, right? And I think we
Right.
get that. I think we get that mixed up a lot of times, and it's really good to have someone of your caliber on this interview process to listen to it, not just from the flip side of softball, but also the flip side of academics and the importance that is to you. And you're someone who's, gone through it all. You've gotten your degree, you've moved forward, you're doing your stuff now, and you're giving back to the game. So Chelsea, I appreciate having you on. It's so great to see you again. I got one last question for you, and I told you it was coming. So
Yeah.
title of the series is Spread Crusher. So after a long, hard-fought day in the circle, because you were a great left-handed pitcher, and I don't think you'll give yourself enough credit. And your brother was a left-handed pitcher too, and he was really good too. But long day in the circle. What's your post-game meal that you're just absolutely going to devour, that you're going to be a spread crusher for?
It always varied depending on how the game went. Um, and so it's one of those things to where either I would sit on the bench and enjoy a Gatorade and some like crackers, basically,
Yeah,
because I was so exhausted, but I knew I needed to eat something.
yeah,
Um, or I would go and have like some spaghetti. So it all depend on
yeah,
exactly how hard that game was, how just exhausting. But of course, being a pitcher, every game is exhausting. So
yeah.
um, and being softball pitcher, pitching almost every game. So
Yeah. Yeah, you
it's
you
not
did a,
based.
you did a little more work than the rest of us, and I'm not going to name names, but the guy scratching his face right now threw a lot less innings than you. So,
Yeah.
um, hey, Chelsea, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for giving your time. I know you're busy. I really hope that there's something in the works for your seniors, let alone just your high school in general. And I hope things get worked out for everyone, and especially every senior across the country. Something needs to happen. We need to give these kids a chance, some sort of send off, anything possible. So, with that being said, thank you for having me, and thank you for being here with us and giving us some insight, especially to these younger girls and these parents, for the journey that they're about to take place. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate being on here and, giving some sort of advice, insight, whatever, the parents or the players will take from this. So just know that, every player is different, every coach is different, every parent is different. So, don't push your daughter too hard. Let them be young, let them want to play the sport,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
let have that passion on their own. So I think with that being said, then um, there will be more girls that are want to work harder to push
Yeah.
themselves if
Yeah.
that's what they want. So
Couldn't have put it better, Chelsea. Thank you very much once again, and I hope the best for everything, and I hope it works out for you guys somehow, some way. Okay.
yes, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good
You too. Take care.